Hello, beautiful people of YouTube. Welcome to another episode of the Thrive and Survive Research Hub. It's your host, Alex Ruiz speaking, and I'm here with my co-host, Tineiwo today. T, how are you doing?
Good as always, Alex. You know me, I control the vibration. Amazing. Excited for today. And yourself, how are you doing?
Nice. Fantastic. As I told you before this pod, I'm highly caffeinated. So this is the best I'm going to be today. But yeah, before we jump into this pod, guys, I just want to ask you, please like and subscribe the channel. Drop a comment if you have any questions for us, and share it with a friend if you enjoy it, because it helps us to grow the podcast. Okay, YouTube stuff is now done. Let's start with the conversation. So I'm thinking for today, we should touch on the subject of how to navigate disagreements amicably. One that is very relevant for us because we had a disagreement earlier this week. So
Yeah,
the question that I would ask you is, how do you handle disagreements?
yeah,
What
yeah,
is your personal approach, your philosophy?
yeah. So I think that's very relevant, right? Because I think I'm not going to just say to myself, I think everyone goes through disagreements at least every week of your life, right? And in my short life experience, I've just come to understand that navigating disagreements boils down to one thing: emotional regulation.
Mm,
I think if you can argue with the objective view of the points being mentioned, then you're able to like keep platonic in your response, right? And I think that's what allows for disagreements to be done in a good way. Because if you are going to respond, then you have a problem, right? So for me, the key has been the emotional regulation, the objective understanding of what the person is trying to say, and then responding according to what they're trying to say and not according to how they are translating the message. I think that just allows you to elevate yourself above the argument. And
mm.
like I said, be the master of that disagreement rather than the participator.
And how do you practically regulate your emotions in the moment whilst you're having a disagreement?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to let the person finish speaking. Right. I think the more you let someone finish speaking, the more time you have to calm down.
Mm,
Yes, I mean that's also debatable because sometimes people are saying stuff that's poking you, but at the end of the day, you're the master of your body, dude. And the minute you believe that someone else can take you out of control of yourself, then you need to go and do some introspection.
yeah,
So with myself, I never allow anyone to be in charge of my emotions. I've taken full control of that. And that has just allowed for me to always stay in a very calm manner, regardless of how intense the argument is or regardless of what is being said. So it's so extreme that someone could even insult anyone in my life, and I would look at them as the fool rather than at them as this guy who's insulting me and let me respond accordingly.
that's awesome. That's such a cool philosophy. I love what you say there about taking responsibility for your emotional state and not
Yeah,
handing authority over to anybody else.
yeah,
Um, you know, we've spoken a lot about it before, but that concept of between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And that gap is
100%.
called freedom.
Yeah,
When you allow someone else to control your emotional state, you are taking away your own freedom, essentially.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, just to add on to that, right? Your freedom is in your emotions. That's where your freedom lies, right?
Yeah.
Your emotions can put you into a cell, or they can free you into the real realms of happiness and joy. So, I think starting off with, the stimulus, like what you said, controlling your thoughts and observing things objectively charges your emotions accordingly, right? And I think, yes, we're speaking about emotional regulation, but it starts at the top, because that's what charges everything else. So if you're going to view it incorrectly, and then the view of which you're viewing it charges your emotions and therefore gives you this response to how you overall feel about the situation, and then also approach the manner in which you will debate or have this disagreement.
Mm. And I think would you do well in the one example that I have of how you handle disagreements, because it's the only time we've ever had one, is you you're very quick to acknowledge someone else's points and perspective. I think the key to handling disagreements amicably is to make sure that both sides feel respected
Mm,
and that we're aligned. We might have a disagreement about how to navigate something, but we're on the same side.
100%.
And I think that's a
100%.
that's a big thing.
And also I must say I like how you quoted that, right? And I think also it's very important to be conscious of who you are disagreeing with, right? Because not everyone is on the same level of maturity.
Mm,
So how you respond also depends on that person, right? So for example, with you, it's very easy to come to terms in terms of resolving a disagreement because firstly, you already understand that we're on the same side, right?
mm,
But in a situation where somebody is saying, I'm right and you're wrong,
yeah.
and you must listen to me, it's a whole different ballgame, right? And
Hmm.
there it's about trying to find the sweet spot, but also not trying to say I am right.
Right. Yeah.
It becomes challenging, and that's where leadership comes in, right?
Exactly.
And even that's where sometimes you have to exercise authority. Last week we spoke to Gio about being the man on top of the ladder looking over the wall and trying to tell everyone else to follow you.
Yeah.
You know, you have sometimes people who just argue, can't see what's over. And in those instances, you just have to exercise your authority. So I think
Sure.
it varies, right, depending on who you're dealing with. But maturity is also a very big thing. And the role that you're playing also is a very big thing in terms of how you respond.
I also think as a leader, it's your responsibility to learn how to communicate
Yeah,
effectively to people so that they can also try and see the big picture
yeah,
that you have the opportunity to see. And also to build that trust with people so that
yeah,
even if they don't necessarily see the whole picture, they trust that you do and that you have a good idea of what you're doing,
yeah.
which speaks to our last episode of winging it, where
Mm,
sometimes as a leader, you don't have the luxury of showing that you're winging it. You kind of have to
yeah,
put on the front, let you know.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to the subject of amicable disagreements, how do you approach navigating tension post disagreement? So often, what I see in a disagreement is you have this period of normalness, and then you have the disagreement. And then, even though the disagreement has kind of been resolved, there's still this tension that's there. That's kind of like an
Mm,
aftershock of that
yeah,
disagreement.
100%.
What's your approach to getting back to a normal position in a relationship so that there's
Yeah,
no baggage that gets carried forward into future uh, interactions?
100%. So I think that's where like in life humor becomes a very important element, right?
Yeah.
Like I think you would know I'm quite a humorous person. I enjoy to laugh. And I think, like I think it's Henry Ford who says like humor is one of the greatest gifts of life, right? Because it allows for you to move on.
Yeah.
And I think if you cannot laugh at yourself or laugh at moments that were tense, then it's very hard to move on in life. This goes across not just in leadership, but even in your personal relationships, your family, with your partner, with your siblings. If you can't look back and laugh at some of the arguments or disagreements that you had, then
Yeah.
you haven't really let go of that,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
for me, I always involve some humor. I also use the time as a big thing. I'm very big on time. I'll check on the person. Are you okay? It's 5 o'clock now. That was 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Time has moved on. Let's also move on, um, because you only have one life. So I think the
Mm,
key for me is humor. I use humor to my advantage a lot when getting in arguments. I won't lie. Sometimes I'm the weak one, right? But I think for someone who knows me well, they then step in and do what I would have traditionally done. But it always starts with you. You do something long enough, and your environment gets something from you long enough, the days you're down, your environment will give it back.
100%.
And
That's
yourself, how do you navigate the tension?
yeah, look, humor is a great tool. And
Yeah.
I use it as a weapon. I find it's in the moments of tension that you can get the biggest laughs
Yeah.
because everyone needs that release, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%. Also, I think vulnerability is a great way to help people move
Mm.
on. Just sharing, like, you know, yeah, I understand we've moved on. Um, I'm also sad that we had a disagreement or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want you to know that I'm here for you and that I still feel the same way about you. Or, also doing a reframing on the disagreement where instead of saying a disagreement, you can say, that was a great conversation because
Yeah.
now we understand each other better,
100%.
which
100%.
leads me into my next question on the subject. Why is it important to have disagreements? What do you think about this subject? Like, why is it necessary? Can you go through life without having disagreements, or what do you think?
Yeah. So I think disagreements are part of the way we were designed, right? I mean, if you look at animals, if you look at dogs, if you look at chickens, if you look at lions, if you look at elephants, they all disagree, they all fight internally, right? But
Yeah,
they come to a point where they're hunting together again. They come to a point where they're sleeping together again. And I think disagreements are part of growth, right? And if you have relationships where you never disagree, then one of the two parties are being dishonest about what's going on, right? I think as humans, we are all different. No one is exactly the same. And in understanding that no one is exactly the same, you must embrace the fact that disagreements are going to come into the picture. So for me, yes, too many disagreements are bad. That can obviously lead to toxicity. But the right amount of agreements are very healthy for any relationship. And out of that comes growth. Out of that comes better solutions, better ideas. I mean, our disagreement last week has now
yeah,
brought about the peak solution, right?
100%.
Uh, so so I think that brings debates, it brings different perspectives to the table.
Yeah,
And it also brings growth and maturity, right? So like I use myself and my wife, we now disagree in a way that to the outside doesn't come across like a disagreement, just a debate, because it's evolved so much over time. So yes, there's times where obviously when it becomes emotional or whatever, but most of the time it's a debate and it ends with a better
yeah,
solution. So for me, it's extremely important, but understanding that it's going to happen is key so that when it does happen, you don't let it get to you or let it get too hot.
100%.
And what do you think, eh?
Yeah, it's all about how you do it. That's a big thing. And the
Yeah.
meaning you give it. If you look at it as, okay, this is positive friction that's going to
Mm,
create something better,
yeah.
then your whole emotional experience of the disagreement changes. You know,
100%.
you say you look at it
100%.
as an intellectual exercise to find a better answer that you can both
Mm,
be aligned on. And I also
100.
think the best disagreements serve as like a tool to clarify what both parties actually think about something.
Mm,
Because
100%.
through the disagreement, you can unpack your own thoughts and feelings about something to get clarity for
100%.
yourself, which is amazing. Um,
And I like what you mentioned there about through the disagreements, you get clarification, right? I almost think of it of like drawing a triangle. I mean, I guess everyone draws a triangle differently, right? When I draw it, I draw the bottom line first, and now you have 2 points, right? And this is the argument, the relationship. And as you guys argue, you now draw the top of the triangle. And you have this pyramid now where the best solution has come to light.
yeah.
So I think that's why, like you said, the how to is important because you now get two different perspectives. And if the how to is done correctly, you get to this peak and this middle point that is optimum for the situation and for both parties.
And what you said about if there are no disagreements, one side is being disingenuous and dishonest. I couldn't agree with more because I
Mm,
think what you can find in relationships often is one person being assertive and one person being submissive,
mhm,
where the submissive person is a people pleaser and they kind of learned that to disagree is a bad thing or to disagree is a source of conflict. And then the assertive person thinks that being disagreeing is, I don't know, being honest or whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
that's a bad dynamic because now you're going to have one person dominating all interactions.
Mm.
And almost to have peace and harmony, one person is compromising what they actually think.
Yeah.
So I think the best is where you have two individuals who are comfortable and confident in expressing their views and they don't feel the need to hide what they think, but they also have the maturity to be respectful in how they do it. Like that's the best
Yeah.
because then you have interdependence, right?
Yeah.
Because you
100%.
have two independent thinkers coming together. So
Yeah.
I will say that it's very dangerous where a person is unwilling to express their real frustrations and views because generally what happens is that someone's emotions will boil over at some point and they will overreact to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
We see this a lot with people where they seem chilled and they're nice, and then 5 years down the line, something just
Yeah.
happens. You didn't do the
Yeah.
dishes, and
Yeah.
it's not about
Yeah.
the dishes. It's about
Yeah.
every little slight along the way that wasn't addressed,
100%.
you
So
know?
well said. And I mean, also like what you mentioned there, right? I think in any relationship, friendship, whatever you name it, individuality is very important,
Hmm.
right? But what makes it better is also recognizing you're both individuals, but interdependence plays a key part because it allows for you to like build on. And like I said, the triangle that I spoke about, getting
Yes,
this optimum point is
100%.
what makes relationships such a joyful experience. And you spoke about one person maybe suppressing their feelings and stuff and then reacting and voiding in a certain way. I also think the negative consequences of not expressing yourself or not having any arguments creates secretive behaviors. So like, for
100%.
example, like I'll use people who go and gossip about their friend to another friend,
Yes,
or people who go and have affairs with other people because they were not happy at
their
home,
relationship, yeah.
or family politics where people go around. All that is a result of not approaching the situation and having conversation about it, because yes, some people keep it in and boil after 5 years. Some people keep it in and subconsciously inherit behaviors or develop behaviors that lead you to self-destructive activities,
Hmm.
such as the ones that I've mentioned. So yeah, approaching it is, have the courage to approach it, have the courage to have an argument. Because at the end of the day, that is the best thing you can do for the relationship.
And you know what? It's cool. Like this actually segues into the next point that I wanted to discuss with you, which is on the subject of setting boundaries in relationships. I think boundaries are the best form of prevention for
Mm,
disagreements and arguments at a later stage in life.
mm,
What's your thoughts on boundaries and how do you go about enforcing it in relationships?
yeah. Well, that's a good one, eh? I think boundaries have got to do with respect.
Mm,
So I always look at a boundary line as a respect line, right? So like I'll give you an example. Most of my life I've led females or in the roles that I play. So teams that I lead are predominantly female based. And it's obviously a fine line with regards to firstly how you lead them, because it's not a bunch of guys,
sure.
so
Different kind of
there's a
communication.
different communication. There's also a little bit of uh closeness that you obviously need to get, because I mean these are people you work with every day. You got to get to know them, they got to become your friends.
Yeah.
But then there's also a point that you cannot cross because two
Yeah.
different genders. And then
Exactly.
there's also perception too. There's outside perception, which
100%.
can be incorrectly perceived.
Of course.
So for me, what has worked well in my life in this situation is giving out the respect the relationship deserves, because that creates a healthy boundary for me and the parties I'm working with, and even for the person perceiving it, because the boundary is defined by the values and traits of respect.
Yeah.
So I think whatever you give out creates the boundary, right? If I don't give out respect, the boundary line kind of doesn't get established.
Yeah.
Therefore, when we argue, it's gonna happen in a boundaryless way. When we communicate, it's gonna happen in a boundaryless way. When we go out for lunch, it's gonna happen in a boundaryless way. So for me, it just starts off with respect. Respect for me has created healthy boundaries. This expands beyond my working relationships. It goes even with you.
Yeah.
Give out respect. It just creates this healthy boundary. Okay, Tineiwo is a family man. I wouldn't call him after 8.
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't reply on a Sunday because he's at church. And same thing with you. When you're on the phone,
Yeah.
because of the respect you give me all the time, okay, Alex is on the phone with his family. It's just a subconscious boundary that you create just by giving out respect to that relationship in accordance to what it means to you.
100%.
And with yourself, what would you say about that? How do you create healthy boundaries and how important is that dynamic in your life?
You know, in one sentence, boundaries to me is just teaching people how to treat you the way you want them to treat you.
Yeah.
That's what boundaries are, right? And if you want people to respect your boundaries, then you must respect their boundaries. So it's this reciprocal relationship that you have with the world. And I think, like I said, I highlighted it a little bit earlier. Boundaries are, in my opinion, a proactive way of avoiding conflict in relationships because you communicate to people, this is the line for me. If you cross this line, this is what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And my take on it is if you habitually violate my boundaries, we can't have a relationship.
100%.
I wish you the best, but it's clear to me that's a non-negotiable thing for me in my friendships and relationships. If you
Yeah,
don't respect me, cool. I understand that's your position, but then I can't be in a relationship with you. That's just what it
100%.
is.
100%.
Like you say, life is so short. Like, why would you spend time with someone that doesn't respect you? Now,
Yeah.
what's challenging is where you're in a professional environment and you cannot just get away from somebody, whether
Yeah.
to the teenagers that are at school or whether it's working professionals. Sure, I get that you can't like geographically remove yourself from a person, but I think what you can do is emotionally remove yourself from them, where your interactions with them are purely professional, purely, okay, there's an outcome
Mm,
that has to be achieved here, but you don't give any of yourself to them.
yeah.
So you have that emotional wall, that emotional boundary.
Yeah.
Uh,
100%. And that's what they call objectivity, right? Because you don't respect my boundaries and you cannot, respect the fact that I'm respecting you and expect you to reciprocate that.
yeah,
I'm going to view this relationship objectively and focus on the outcomes in the best way possible without creating any friction between you and I.
exactly.
And full. And I think when someone decides to do that to you, then you really need to go look at yourself. Or when you decide to do that to someone else, both parties need to go look at themselves because it's not always a perfect scenario, right?
Of course.
That's a challenging thing. But I think at the end of the day, the conversation is key. The how to is key. But if it's an environment where you can't get away from someone, you just have to focus on why am I here? I'm here
Yeah,
to deliver.
yeah.
And if this person can't emotionally connect with me, I will still deliver in this objective way until we find a new solution.
And I think in a nutshell, you have to set boundaries because if you don't, you will lose respect for yourself, which
Yeah,
is the biggest sin in a way. Like
100%.
that is a
100%.
tragedy to lose respect for yourself. It's a tragedy. And you said something which I thought was hilarious when you said it, where you said, I want to meet the person who said nice guys finish last
Yeah.
because you want to blixen them basically. I get what you're saying where you're coming from, but I think there's this perception of what it is to be nice and what it is to be kind. And I
Mm,
don't like it because often on the surface, being nice is just not having boundaries. It's just being a pushover. It's not really what it is to be nice, right? Like we know it
mm,
really, being kind is
100%.
not that,
Yeah.
but it can look like that when people don't pay attention close enough. So like if you're a people pleaser, I used to be a people pleaser. I'm a reformed people pleaser. I don't do it anymore. But when I was younger, I wanted to make everyone happy. That's people
Mm,
pleasing behavior.
mm,
When you try and take responsibility for other people's emotional states, you will end up compromising yourself at some point because everyone has a different objective. Everyone's representing different interests essentially. So I guess being a nice guy, it's like we said earlier, there's never a disagreement. You're not being honest, you're not being authentic. Often being nice is just not having boundaries. Really being nice and being kind is this reciprocal respect relationship of
mm,
I'm authentic, you're authentic, I
mm.
communicate with you, you can communicate with me.
100%.
We work together to have a great relationship. That is
Mm,
kindness and being a nice guy the right way. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%. And I like how you answered that, because I think what you're elaborating on there is saying that a nice guy is someone who effectively communicates their boundary, right? And I think a good example, a good way to break down what you just said is, hey, this is who I am. This is how I'm treating you.
Yeah,
And by me being nice in this manner, I am telling you that I expect you to treat me the same way.
exactly.
And if you don't, then unfortunately, I'm going to have to let it go. So I
Exactly.
think the true definition of nice guys is being able to treat someone so well that they understand that this is how you want to be treated back. And they don't tell you this is how I want you to treat me. No,
Yeah,
they show you through their actions.
100%.
You
100%.
know,
Yeah,
and if you can't pick up those actions, then that nice guy is not going to be the nice guy anymore.
100%.
He's gonna cut the line and he's gonna move on, and you won't understand why, because he's not going to explain to you. He just expects you to read the actions and, as a mature grown up,
Yeah,
reciprocate the niceness you're receiving.
100% couldn't agree more. And it's like,
Yeah,
it's like in the essence, to be a good person, you have to be strong, in a
yeah,
way.
yeah,
And boundaries is a source of strength.
yeah,
Self-respect it's a modality of strength,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
build it up over time as you progress.
yeah.
So yeah, great topic. That was the last of my questions, and I think we are hitting the end of our period anyways.
Yeah.
But T, I just wanted to say thank you for your wisdom. I think you are wise beyond your years. I know you say that to me a lot, but the shoe fits for you as well.
No, thank you. Thank you, Alex.
And yeah, I'm going to take notes from this because I learned a lot from this conversation.
Well, thanks, Alex. And thanks for your good questions, eh? They always say the wise people know the right questions to ask. So kudos to the good questions as well. I think that's where the secret to getting all the answers lie, right? You don't know the right questions, you'll never get the right answers. So yeah, cool. Alex, that was great. And thanks to all the listeners for joining. What a great episode 24.
Yep. And I hate to sound like a robot repeating things, but guys, please like and subscribe the video. Please leave comments if you have any questions. Please share it with your friends. It helps us to grow the channel. And until we speak again.
Cool. Adios.